Hello, everyone. Teching 101 here, and today I have something very special for all of you. Today I'm going to be interviewing Nicole Hirsch Whitaker. She is the lead cinematographer for the first two episodes of the One Piece live-action series. I'm recording this on August 30th. The premiere is going to be happening tomorrow on the 31st. Nicole has done work on many films and television in the last 20 years. She's been nominated for Emmys twice in 2014 and 2015. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Matthew.
No problem. And that was really just the tip of the iceberg with your career. So if there's anything else you would like to spotlight here at the beginning, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about this show for now, and we can always do another. I just finished a really fun film in Hungary. I just got home a couple days ago, so we can talk about that another time. But yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yes. We don't have much time, so I'm just going to get into it today. For this series, I heard you had your team ready to go about 6 weeks before production actually began. I just wanted to know, is that unusual in your line of work? And how did you use that time to your advantage when production finally started?
Yeah, so, because of COVID, the director and I actually had over a year to prep. So we started working on it a long time before we actually were boots on the ground in South Africa. And then we were there for 4 months of prep before the show started. And my crew started about my actual crew started about 6 weeks before, which is definitely unusual to have a crew start that soon. But we had a lot of testing to do, a lot of R&D, with everything that Luffy could do, the stretching and, just the different characters. We had to do a lot of testing. So it was really great to have them on board so early, because we could actually prep together and figure things out together with the visual effects department and the camera department, the lighting department, Mark, the showrunners. Everybody was working together. Costumes, of course, production design and costumes started way before I came. So things were really in motion by the time we got there, obviously with everybody chiming in. But yeah, so it was a lot of prep, but it was a very big project, so it was super necessary. Yeah.
It's a huge project, and with this being an adapted anime, I would assume costumes and everything, that would have to be VFX as well, would have to be all on point. So it's great that you had like a little bit of extra time. Leading into that, I heard you actually caught up with a lot of the manga and the anime in preparation for this project. So was there any moment when you were like reading the manga or watching a scene in the anime where you were thinking how to like exactly structure a shot? And I understand, of course, the anime is not a one-to-one to the live action, but was there anything like that in your mind when you started?
Well, this is my favorite story. So my son is the biggest One Piece fan in the world. So I grew up as a parent, reading all the books, watching all the shows, instead of other shows, I'm not even going to mention them, that other kids would watch. My son watched everything in Japanese. And so I knew exactly who these characters were. Some of, to be honest, some of them, like some of the more obscure characters that weren't in the East Blue, I didn't know about, that are going to be in later series. But I mean, I knew these characters. Like, it was so easy for me to fall into this. And honestly, if I hadn't have done the show, they would never speak to me again. So I didn't really have a choice, even though I was really excited. It was like when I got the script and I called my son, I don't think he could speak. So yeah, super cool. So yeah, so for me, it was less of a learning curve probably than for other people, for sure.
But, oh my goodness. Yeah. That's great. And a lot of people, I think, are going to feel at ease with that. Like when they know, like Matt Owens, when he was attached to this project, I mean, he was speaking with us and a lot of the other YouTubers in a stream once. And it's like, oh, this is a real fan of the series that's part of this. So yeah. You being a fan as well, that's like to a lot of people, that means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, Matt wears a One Piece t-shirt, One Piece shoes, I mean, he was decked out in One Piece at work every day. I mean, he's a super fan. And, so I always knew that the minute that I met him and Steve and Mark as well, the director, who's, really wanted to create something grounded, and that Oda was involved. Obviously that was a huge plus, to know that. I mean, you still never know, he could have really not been happy with what we were doing. So, it's always a little sort of, you're walking on eggshells trying to do something like this. And especially with the, some of the other shows that had come out that didn't get received well. And so, we were really nervous and everybody wasn't sure. You never know, it's like, you can think you're doing everything perfect and it's not, what the fans want. So I'm just really, seems so far, I mean, obviously we'll see tomorrow, but it seems so far that everybody's really happy. So I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have not seen it. No, I've just seen like the clips and just trailers that everybody has seen. But I had a friend that was at the screening and he saw it at LA and he really liked it. So yeah, and a lot of the initial press was good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So moving on to the 2 episodes that you've done, I have not seen it, but I'm going to assume, like with most One Piece media, I'm sure you're aware, usually starts with Roger's execution. So if that's in the first 2 episodes, were you the one to actually film those scenes? And that was like the first introduction to the show. So what was it like with that experience?
Well, we actually, funny enough, we didn't shoot Gold Roger till later on, almost towards the end. And an actor that I'd worked with on another show called Patriot ended up playing Gold Roger. So Michael and I were like really good friends, and his son is a huge One Piece fan too. So when he got the show, he's like, Nicole's on the show. My son's a huge fan. And I sent him, just some information. We started talking, and I was so excited. He wanted to play Gold Roger because, it's such it's such an important character, and it sets up One Piece basically. So, in season 1, they touch on it very lightly. I don't know what Matt and Steve are planning for season 2. I'm sure they'll, elaborate on it, but it's a very quick piece in the beginning just to set up why this whole story exists basically. But yeah.
And I mean, that's how it is in the original. I mean, in the manga, it's just like 1 page, I think. And in the anime, it's just like, this is Roger, this is what happened. And it kicks off the Great Pirate Era. So a significant scene. And from what I've seen in the trailer, everything seems to click with that pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we shot a lot more than that is actually in the episode because they had to cut it down. It was too long. But I think it works really well.
Of course, there's always stuff that's going to hit the cutting room floor no matter what. And I mean, there's only 8 episodes to work with, and that's the whole East Blue. So they had to move through a lot of it. Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Another big set piece that I think a lot of people, like Jeff Ward as Buggy, a lot of people in the initial trailer, even the people that were a little hesitant were like, okay, they got Buggy down perfect. So I'm looking at his tent and the lighting and the smoke and everything set up for that. So how exactly was that set structured in terms of like camera placement? Did you have any say in how you're going to set it up or anything like that?
Yeah. So that was a really fun set. So Richard Bridgeland, who is our production designer, he designed the tent. It was made from scratch from old sails. It's just, I mean, it was one of the most beautiful sets. It was gigantic, huge. It was built on stage because we had a lot of prep. We built a huge lighting rig. Everything was pre-programmed. I had an amazing board op, Rohad, who basically would walk around with me with an iPad, and we would design the lighting cues so that when Jeff was acting, I had nothing on the floor. Everything was in the ceiling so that he could move around, so that we would basically chase him with lights. So we would block things. And so everything was either outside the tent or in the ceiling. And then the visual effects department painted in the top of the tent and then incorporated my lights as part of the circus lights. So it made sense that the lighting would be there because, obviously we had many discussions about where's the electricity coming from, because there is no electricity. I know because I watched all the anime where it comes from, but we haven't set that up yet. I don't want to be a spoiler for people who don't love, who haven't read everything. But so there was a lot of discussion about how there's light, period. So we just kind of decided, listen, we've just got to take some creative license. We wanted it to be beautiful, and we wanted it to have, we obviously were still shooting TV, so we had to shoot a lot fast. And there's a lot of characters in those scenes. And then we also wanted to have this, transgression of it going from this sort of cheery circus world into something very dark. So we had to do all of that, and we did it all in camera, which obviously Buggy breaking apart's not in camera, but they did in there was a new technology that they were able to use for his breaking up and
yeah. I'm just surprised. I thought Jeff Ward could just separate his body. Like that's just what he could do. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Yeah. When I saw that set, I had no idea how it was structured, but I'm just like picturing a shot with like just a camera straight down on the entire, like if there was something like that, I'm like, that would be really cool.
Oh, you'll see it. Oh yeah.
That's perfect.
Huge overhead. There's 2. There's one of the actual beginning where you see all of the circus performers, and there's a really cool one of Luffy when he's getting stretched by Buggy, and there's a big overhead spinning shot with all the lights around him, and it's really the scope is really amazing, and just the fact that they were able to, you know, keep the scope but also keep the grounded story. That was something that was really important to Mark and I know to Steve and Matt as well, just to make sure that, you know, the most important thing about any show, it doesn't matter how it looks. You know, if the story isn't good, nobody cares about the characters. So,
Exactly.
you know, we were spending a lot of time on the look, but we were also very cognizant of the fact that we also needed to tell the story. And sometimes, you know, a big fancy shot isn't the right thing to do. You want to be with the characters. So I think that was something that I was really proud of, that, you know, sometimes when I wanted to do something a little bit more than I probably should have, Mark would be like, let's just tell the story.
I really like the point you brought up, that people were concerned with, like, hey, isn't this like a pirate world? Why is there electricity here? And I'm like, well, that's something that goes all the way back through Oda's world. It's kind of anachronistic in that sense, where it's a pirate world, but you also have electricity and refrigerators, and then the Baratie you get to later. And it's like, this all makes sense eventually, but you just have to understand it early on. You know, it'll flow into it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But the fact you guys were bringing that up, I think that's a good sign. So I know I saw a video with Iñaki, and he was talking about a particular scene where he was like in the water in a rowboat with Kobe. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, well, a lot of this was filmed on the water. Exactly. I know there's even an underwater scene later. I don't know if you were the one to actually film that, but have you worked like underwater before? Like, how did that go? Like that whole new thing?
Yeah, no, I've done a lot of underwater work, a lot of tank work. So that was something that I knew I was going to be doing, obviously being on boats. But the unusual thing about this was these were ships that had been built for another show that was a very different show, called Black Sails, and the production designer repurposed these ships. And basically one of the reasons we went to South Africa was because of that. And then they also had 3 tanks at the stages. So we didn't do anything actually in the real water. It was all in tanks, and then everything was extended in post. So, you know, when Inaki and Kobe were, well, I should say Luffy and Kobe, when they were in the boat, we have guys, you know, that are like waiting in the water, just spinning the boat around to make sure the sun's in the right direction. And then the underwater work that I did, we actually did in the same tank. So that was when Luffy first gets knocked out of the boat, when the monster comes. And I don't want to give too much away, but anyway.
Right, of course, yes.
Lord of the Coast, yeah.
Lord of the Coast, yes. I mean, and it's, yeah, because like I understood, like, especially the Baratie, like in the anime, it's in the middle of the ocean. I'm like, okay, pretty sure they can't actually film it in the middle of the ocean. It's going to be on a set, and it's going to be expanded and everything with VFX. But it looks really good with everything that they set up with that. Yeah. So you've been in this field in particular for over 20 years. In fact, I looked in to see like if there's anything that you did that I have seen myself, and this is really early on, but you did work for Thank You for Smoking. And wow, second unit. Yeah. But I saw that, and I'm like, I saw that when I was in university, and I love that little that movie there. So that was one to mention that. Yeah.
Great movie. Yeah.
But is there anything in your long storied career that you have, you know, learned over the years that you incorporated directly into One Piece? Like, oh, it was something I learned a couple years ago that works perfectly for this particular project.
Yeah. So, you know, I shot commercials for about 15 years, and then I got back into narrative little less than 8 years ago. I just decided I really wanted to tell stories again and focus on narrative. And so I basically started working in television, a few features, indie features, but the show that I did with this same director, which is where I met Mark, was called Jupiter's Legacy. It was another Netflix show. And, you know, that was another big TV show with lots of moving parts, stunts, visual effects, prosthetics, you know, crazy superhero wardrobe, lots of big lighting, lots of big sets. And so that really that was probably like, you know, that was definitely the biggest show I've ever done. And I really got my feet wet and learned a lot on that show that I could then bring to this show. So that was, I think, probably my biggest teaching tool to know how to do a show like this.
I really have to say, I think they picked the perfect person to open up this series with, because it's like all the stuff you've worked on. It's just like, yeah, this is, and you're also a fan of the story. I mean, this is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really, I was, like I said, it's like when you get to work on something that's also close to your heart, it also makes it a really different experience. And, you know, like my kids came to visit and they got to see the sets and talk to Matt and Steve and meet the cast. And, you know, so it became like also, you know, something important to me and my family. And I felt like even just the cast, I mean, they were incredible and became family while we were there. They're just,
Wow.
you know, grounded, amazing young adults that just, you know, they brought so much to this show that we wouldn't have gotten without them, for sure.
The camaraderie I have seen, particularly with the main cast, has been phenomenal. Like even like early on, just the, you know, stuff from set, I'm like, oh, these are the Straw Hat Pirates. They're gonna be fine. Like the characters, the main cast. Yeah.
They hang out together. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say where they're like all together right now hanging out. Like they just love each other. Like it's crazy. It's crazy wild.
Casting is so well. So
Yeah.
just here at the end, honestly, I just have one more question, and this is as just a fan of the series. Who was your favorite Straw Hat Pirate?
Oh, I can't say.
Oh, okay.
I would never say that. I loved them all. You know, I didn't get to shoot Sanji or Usopp because they weren't in my episodes.
Right.
So I had Luffy and Zoro and Nami. So, you know, the three of them, I mean, it depended on the day, you know, it's like, I mean, listen, Inaki would come on set every day and go crazy and yell and say hello to everybody and just get everybody all excited.
I heard a story he would play John Cena every time he showed up in the car just to announce his presence. So I'm like, yeah, that's a Luffy thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, he was Luffy 100%. And but you know, again, I mean, I also, I loved Buggy, I loved Alvida. It's just, there were so many great characters. And you know, I mean, the only thing that was hard for me was that I couldn't stay and shoot more. So I would have loved to, but you know, you do have to pass the torch. You can't do it all. So
Absolutely. With that, did you like, I mean, do you just like the other cinematographers for the other episodes? They just do their own thing, or do you have any input in what they do? Or it's just, okay, I'm done with my 2 episodes. It's what you guys do. Yeah.
No, basically they followed our look. My director and I, who was also one of the executive producers, we called it a Bible. And we met with all of them before they started their episodes and took them through what we were doing. And you know, we had lenses built for the show and we had a very specific lighting style, and they inherited my crew. So basically I hired everybody, then they just folded into the mix. And of course, you know, they did things, you know, differently when they wanted to. I never told them they couldn't. But there was an understanding that we'd created the look of the show, and they were following the look that we'd created, even though they had new sets and new scenarios. So sometimes they would have to do things differently. But it is the hardest thing about television versus movies, is you do have to sort of, you know, give people space, and you can't, you know, hover and tell them what to do.
As you said, pass the torch. Yeah.
The torch. Yeah. But they were really, I feel like, you know, for most of the time, they were very respectable of what we had started, and keeping the look of the show consistent, because that was obviously very important to everybody. You don't want it to start bumping all over the place. And part of the thing was coming up with the look of the show. We spent a year coming up with the look of the show and designing it and testing it. So, you know, from everyone from the studio to the showrunners to the new directors, if they hadn't have, you know, continued the look, it would have not probably been the same show. So
My God. Well, I think it was in really good hands, and we're just coming up on the end of the time here, but we'll see tomorrow. But I think the overwhelming response is going to be pretty positive from this, and you were a big part of making that happen. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming to speak with me, but also just for working on this project that's loved by so many.
Thank you. Thanks. It was nice talking to you. Yeah.
You as well. You have a lovely day.
Thanks, Matthew.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.